The dialogue of Critias by Plato begins with Timaeus' prayer, asking that his words be true and that any mistakes be forgiven by the gods. Critias, who continues the discussion, acknowledges that his account carries great risk if expressed incorrectly, while knowledge of the gods is limited. Human behavior, whether in politics or nature, is more familiar and easier to understand with precision. Plato signals to the reader that what follows is more grounded in human understanding than Timaeus' previous discourse. The history about to be recounted relies on the memory of Critias, who invokes Mnemosyne, the goddess of memory, before beginning his narrative. Critias starts by describing a war that took place 9,000 years before the time of Solon, whom he later mentions. This war was fought between those outside the pillar of Heracles and those within. The Athenians, leading one side, battled against the Atlanteans. Atlantis, larger than Libya and Asia combined, was ultimately swallowed by the ocean due to a great earthquake, leaving behind a barrier of mud that obstructed voyagers from Athens to other parts of the sea. Athens, ruled by Athena and Hephaestus, flourished under their guidance. United by the love of philosophy, its people embraced wisdom and virtue, shaping a just and noble government. Critias provides detailed geographical descriptions, mentioning mountains, fertile soil, and fountains of both warm and cold water. This suggests that Plato's account may have had some empirical basis during his time. However, much of this evidence was lost, as Critias notes that multiple floods reshaped the land. He specifically mentions that the Acropolis was once different but changed after an earthquake and flood, which was the third such disaster before the great destruction of Deucalion. As Critias recounts the story, he selects details that he remembers or that Plato may have heard from him. However, he later asserts that his knowledge comes from Solon, stating that his grandfather, Drapides, possessed the original writings, which Critias himself read as a child. As the gods divided the earth, Poseidon was given Atlantis, where he married a mortal woman named Cleito, whose name means famous or renowned. After their union, Poseidon created alternating zones of land and sea, 3 of water and 2 of land, to protect the island, as ships were not yet known. However, later in the dialogue, Critias describes the construction of docks and ships, indicating a more advanced civilization. The description also highlights a sophisticated society with springs of water and other remarkable features. Cleito and Poseidon had 5 pairs of twin sons. Poseidon divided Atlantis into 10 portions, granting the eldest twin the larger and most prosperous region, making them kings over the rest. The other sons were made prince, ruling over many people. The eldest, Atlas, became the first king, and from him the island took the name Atlantis. The second pair of twins received an island near the Pillar of Heracles, known at the time as the region of Gades. Critias, as he narrates, carefully details the name of the twins, which may hold deeper significance. If we analyze their meaning, they could represent different races of people. However, Plato does not specify such distinctions. Still, he does mention regions like Egypt and other great civilizations, suggesting that the names might symbolize the diverse peoples said to have descended from Poseidon. Critias mentions a substance known to the people of that time, but now only a name to us. It was discovered through mining, though its exact nature remains uncertain. Plato calls this substance orichalcum. The historians debate whether it refers to copper, a type of mountain copper, or something else entirely. However, identifying it with certainty is difficult. The dialogue also describes the spiritual sacrifices at the temple in honor of the gods. The kings of Atlantis would gather every 5 or 6 years to reaffirm their oath of ruling justly. Their agreements and laws were inscribed on the temple walls, written on pillars, and were based on the laws given to them by Poseidon. Over time, the blending of mortal and divine lineage gradually altered the nature of the Atlanteans. As Critias narrates, this change led to moral decline among the inhabitants. Seeing this, Zeus, the king of the gods, summoned all the gods to a certain place, considered the heart of the world. At this moment, the dialogue abruptly ends, with Zeus about to speak. What Zeus was going to say remains unknown, as Critias is incomplete. It is unclear whether Plato ever finished writing it or if the ending was lost over time. While many theories exist regarding its incompleteness, no one can say for certain what happened. The description of Atlantis presents it as a highly advanced civilization, filled with luxury and remarkable achievements. While Critias recounts these details, he emphasizes that he received this account word for word from Solon. One of the strongest criticisms against the idea that Critias is a real historical narrative comes from Benjamin Jowett, who produced a complete translation of Plato's works. He argues that no one knew better than Plato how to invent a noble lie, suggesting that Plato deliberately crafted the dialogue to appear authentic. Jowett outlines 10 points where he believes Plato emphasizes the truthfulness of his account, asserting that Plato portrays it as a corrupted myth that he is now restoring. However, historian George Grouty leaned towards believing in Solon's supposed Egyptian source, despite no historical evidence supporting it. Others, like Martin, explored the possibility of an Egyptian origin for the legend, while Alexander von Humboldt considered it part of a broader mythological tradition. Some scholars even speculated that Atlantis foreshadows the discovery of a real landmass, the continent of America. Martin, citing the authority of Egyptian priests, argues that the tale originates from them, though Jowett notes that these priests were known to enjoy deceiving the Greeks. The disagreements among scholars do not make it clear whether Plato presents Critias as a purely mythical tale or a historical account. However, for Plato, this story is not entirely fictional, detached from history. Some of the details, such as the Egyptian preservation of knowledge, align with descriptions found in Herodotus, reinforcing the idea that the Egyptians were regarded as keepers of ancient wisdom. The key question arises: why does Plato want us to believe this story if it is not true? If he insists on its credibility by invoking the authority of Solon, then what is the ultimate purpose of the dialogue? While the full purpose remains unknown due to its incompleteness, the timeline presented is not randomly chosen. As mentioned in Timaeus, the Greek civilization is said to be 1,000 years older than the Egyptian civilization, according to what the Egyptian priest told Solon. Furthermore, the flood that supposedly destroyed Atlantis is dated to 9,000 years before Solon's time, coinciding with the end of the last ice age, as suggested by geological studies. Some argue that Critias serves as a foundation for the Republic, but this interpretation is difficult to sustain. The two dialogues diverge on several points, and Greek literature already contains numerous foundational myths, making it unlikely that Plato was simply adding another one. Graham Hancock, building on his research, suggests that sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey offer the possibility that an ancient advanced civilization existed 11,000 years ago, one the Greeks would not have known about. He also considers the idea that Sundaland, a now submerged landmass lost to rising sea levels, could have been the real Atlantis. The Egyptian priest at Sais in the Nile Delta claimed that Atlantis and its destruction were recorded in sacred temple archives dating back thousands of years before the known beginning of Egyptian civilization in the late 4th millennium BC. This, Hancock argues, makes it possible that the story passed down to Plato was based on real events rather than mere myth. However, one major criticism, as Hancock acknowledges, is that no direct mention of Atlantis has been found in surviving ancient Egyptian papyri or inscriptions, but only in Plato's writings. Despite this, he points to a similar account, such as the destruction of Atlantis-like lands in the Idfu inscriptions, and the tale of the shipwrecked sailor, which describes a lost island civilization. These parallels suggest that the idea of a great lost civilization existed in ancient traditions, even if Atlantis itself remains elusive. Whether Atlantis is a myth or has historical roots, one thing remains clear: part of the history have been lost over time. Many cultures have flood narratives describing catastrophic events, and Plato's account aligns with this broader theme of forgotten history. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed it.